guess what? I got a fever.
You give me fever, fever in the morning, a fever all through the night.
Welcome to episode 82 of the Dynasty Fever podcast. This is the Mickey Schuler episode. If you were a fan of the 80s Jets, he was kind of the tight end during that Freeman McNeil, Ken O'Brien, Wesley Walker era. Like, he was the tight end, Mickey Schuler. So, yeah. Also, if you're in the across the water down of the Delaware River down in Philly, or if you were like Jesse and grew up just on east side of those shores, Mike Quick was number 82
Quick,
for the
number 82
for the Eagles. Yeah. So please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. We are the little Dynasty podcast the best Dynasty podcast that your friends don't know about. Please also show some love on the YouTube channel. We'll see if we'll be beefing up some of the content there based on our schedules. Jesse Schneeman is my co-host. I'm Brian Ford. Jesse, how you doing?
Schneeman, you're giggly today. I'm doing great, Brian. I'm here to talk football. We're about to get some real football. It's crazy. We're going to get like almost the best of the Chiefs, which doesn't hurt my feelings all that much. It looks like Kelsey's not going to play.
Well,
and it's definitive that Cooper Kupp is not going to play.
The most important Kelsey is playing this week.
Yes, correct.
Nobody likes us. We don't care. I'm dressed like a mummer.
Yeah, we're talking about Travis Kelce's mom, by the way.
Oh yeah, sure, yes, yeah. Is she on Hard Knocks?
Okay. No, she's been on some commercials lately.
Swear to Christ.
Like NFL commercials. Like there's this theme that they have going that you can't write this stuff, and it's like Key or Peele. I can't remember which. Sitting in a writer's room with a bunch of players and Kelsey's mom, and they're making up storylines for the season. DK Metcalf.
Well, the script, Arian Foster, right? Didn't he tell you? Oh, wait, no? Who was the player that said there's a script for the NFL? It's a former running back, wasn't it? Who was saying that like the NFL is rigged and there's a script every year or something? Shit.
I don't remember that at all, but it sounds like somebody with mental health issues, unfortunately. But
you didn't get your script in the mail.
That's how the government keeps you from believing what's actually going on. Is they get each other to call each other crazy when we have a different idea. Look out for your Dynasty Fever branded tinfoil hats on sale on our website when we get up.
Scripted claim. Yeah, Arian Foster says the NFL is literally rigged. Arian.
When did he say this?
This was last year, January 2023, like right after the, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look more into it. But Arian Foster is interesting because he was, the folk tales go, sort of an intelligent, thoughtful, thinks for himself kind of guy that didn't really, that rubbed some of the brass in the NFL the wrong way. By the way, I think it was vegan for a while too while he was playing. It was interesting. So.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they hated that.
I'm vegan.
Hard to keep muscle mass on, blah blah blah.
No, it's not. If you do it right, there's vegan.
No, I'm saying I'm just saying that's what they would say. I'm
sorry. I have a hair triggered defense of veganism.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, I meant to ask you about the chicken they're growing in labs from stem cells. Whether you think that's another time.
It's a whole other conversation. It's a big debate in the community, et cetera, et cetera. So you mentioned that we're about to get some football. Up until the last couple of days, since we have this heat wave here in Jersey, it was getting cooler. The sun was going down a little earlier. Starting to, the NFL Films music was playing in my head for no apparent reason. It kind of feels like It's about to be football season. And in a way, I have very mixed feelings about it, right? Because now it's the season of like micro overreactions, having to set lineups and do waivers every week. Like that. It's the part I get kind of, the
That's
week
actually playing the game.
the weekly turnaround, and it's, that's the part that I kind of like the least, because it's such a quick turnaround on things. But at the same time, we get to finally stop arguing for a few months and see how this shit, actually plays out.
So Brian, this year I've actually made a conscious decision, and it really I made the decision because it just sort of kind of occurred to me. It's sort of happening, but I'm just going to be more zen, right,
Yeah.
about my teams and my lineups. I
Yeah.
can only control so much, can only get so much information. I have to make sure that I, have all of the correct information about injuries and whatnot. But otherwise, once it's set, it's set. What
Yeah.
happens, happens. And I'm gonna let it go. I'm not gonna overreact and make a bunch of moves. I'm gonna try to go with, what I have. And uh, really, I think what struck me is in a redraft keeper league that I've been in for 30 years. I, I looked and my best keeper is Cooper Cup in the fifth. And this was before the setback with the hammy, so that seemed all right. But I realized I had drafted Garrett Wilson in the 15th round last year and then cut him week 3. So wasn't available as my keeper. I'm going to stop doing that shit. I drafted a few rookies in that league this year, JSN, A-Chain, Roshan, and I'm going to hold them on my roster for a while. And just, like you said, try not to micro overreact. That's a really good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah. And statistically speaking, the first few weeks, like mathematically, of your fantasy season, like matter very little. I saw a breakdown somewhere, even excluding the playoffs, which obviously matter, but there's like chunks of the season where, like, if you do poorly, it doesn't correlate to how you do in the championships or whatever. And like doing poorly in the first part of the year has the least impact on your, yeah, because
As long as it doesn't, as long as it
well,
doesn't keep you out of the playoffs.
yeah. I mean, because we're just kind of seeing how things play out. It's not, we don't have much data to go on, right? And we're sort of just gathering this data in the first few weeks, and it's important not to overreact to it. I'm really excited for DFS. I already got taking my notes and shit, and yeah, I get into that shit.
Right on. Yeah, I don't do DFS at all.
And I dove way into best ball this summer. Way too much. Spent way too much money. Just draft after draft after draft, just because whatever, I had time.
Hopefully you get some of that back.
There's a best ball porno. There's a video called Best Ball Brunch. And I don't know why. I don't think there's much eating of brunch and mimosas going on, but they literally draft a best ball team while they're doing their thing and like talk about the players and week 17 correlation. Like I don't get, like, it's 44 minutes long. I didn't watch it. Like, I didn't watch the whole thing, but yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Yeah.
I might have to quit this business. They got me. I can never match that. I will never be able to convince my wife to do that. She's very supportive, but
all right. So if you haven't tuned out by now, we're kind of putting the last words on the off season, doing some bold predictions and some other stuff tonight or today. Well, I don't know. It's almost 6. I consider it the evening, but the sun is still up. So yeah, bold predictions. Last year's we didn't do too badly on, by the way.
If you go points per game, we did all right.
Yeah. So Ayuk, I said Ayuk would finish top 24. He was top 17 total and he was 23 in points per game. One. Yeah. I really took a whiff on Swift will be a top 3 running back in PPR. James Cook did finish outside the top 5 rookie RBs in PPR. 7th total, 10th in point per game. And I took a big miss on Rodgers would score below Pickett in 6-point TD leagues. I thought Pickett would start earlier, and I thought Rodgers would be even worse than he was, despite a down year. You said that Goddard would be a top 3 tight end, which he was in points per game. He missed a few weeks, so he was only 9 total, tight end 9 total. You said Josh Palmer would be a usable every week starter as a wide receiver flex. He was wide receiver 29 in total points. If you go from weeks 1 to 14, and wide receiver 36 in points per game, that's a wide receiver 3. That's a flex, right? You said the only usable Kansas City starter would be Travis Kelce. You were predicting sort of an off year for Mahomes, not adjusting well to life after Tyreek. That was kind of a whiff.
Yeah.
And you said Tua would be a top 12 quarterback. And he was 15 total, despite missing some games. And he was tied QB 11 in points per game for weeks, if you extend it out to weeks 1 to 18, which I had to do because I felt like I should do because he missed a few weeks. So I wanted to get the better, representation of what he did. And yeah, he was tied. He was quarterback 11 in points per game. So we did pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know how spicy those were though.
I mean, they kind of some of them seemed it for sure at the time. I mean, I don't know that either of us, speaking of spicy, gave a rating on the Scoville scale of heat, which is what we're going to use today to judge the spiciness of our takes. I don't think any of us gave a Carolina Reaper or Trinidad Scorpion rating to eat any of our takes, but we were up there in the high, medium to low hot, the way we were talking about each other's takes. They don't seem like that in retrospect because they kind of hit. We had a pretty good 67% ish, hit rate on those. So maybe that's why they don't seem so spicy. But it was interesting to hear some of our conversations talking about player value and stuff. If for those of you who are wondering, it's episode 49 before we started doing before I started bothering Jesse with jersey numbers. So the first part of tonight, we're going to be talking about bold predictions. We'll do a few other things if we have time. We're going to each give 5 bold predictions, which we have not shown each other. And we are going to use the Scoville heat scale to judge the spiciness there of each other's bold predictions, as we did last year. Would you like to explain to the listeners what the Scoville heat scale is?
Absolutely. So I don't know who came up with the Scoville scale or who actually uses it, but I do know that is a scale for hot peppers and the spiciness, right? So it's a 0, which is a bell peppers, little pepper icons, to 5 pepper icons, which is a Carolina Reaper or a Trinidad Scorpion, as Brian mentioned earlier. And there's a bunch of stuff in between, right? So they range from, not hot at all to, trust me, you're going to have problems unless you're some kind of, I don't want to call you a freak, but unless you're a freak.
You were telling a story last year, I think, about how something snuck a hot pepper or dared you to eat a pepper or something like that, and it didn't turn out very well.
The first habanero I ever ate. So it was actually the first 5-star, really nice restaurant that I worked in right out of college. Johnson & Wales had awesome placement. I went and worked on top of Mount Hood at Timberline Lodge in their Cascade Dining Room. It's a 5-star restaurant, really nice. And the sous chef was really cool. The executive chef, I called him the Olympic chef because he wore his medals and shit while he was walking around the kitchen. I just thought he was so ridiculous. He was such an asshole. But the sous chef was really cool, this guy, James. And every night he'd come up to me and he called me the Jersey Kid. Hey, Jersey Kid, what do you want to eat? And I'd be like, I don't care. Fix me up something, no seafood, make it spicy. And so one night he comes up to me, he's like, hey, Jersey Kid, you like spicy food, huh? I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, I took a collection. There's, I don't remember. It was like $30 or $40, which was a lot to me at the time. if you eat this hot pepper, I'm like, I love hot peppers. He's just laughing at me the whole time. So he's got on a plate a single habanero cut in half with the seeds taken out, and which is a blessing because the seeds are, hold most of the capsaicin, which is what makes it hot. I ate that sucker and it lit me up. So like to the point where, I mean, I don't know how long that lasted, 20, 30 minutes, but it just burns your face off, and unless there's actually like milk in your mouth. So as you're drinking the milk, you're fine. Once it leaves your mouth for half a second, burns immediately back. That's all that helps. And you just gotta wait it out. Yeah, crying. And then the next day, coming out the other end, it's pretty much as bad. And I lived in a little cabin where there was no heat in the bathroom, so I created the heat for the rest of my roommates.
So that reminds me, everybody loves the show The Bear. I haven't watched it. Have you seen it?
Yes, chef.
Do you like it? Or?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. If you've worked in the business, it's like it's a trigger. You start getting PTSD. For real. Like there's a scene where tickets won't stop coming out of the printer on a constant basis because somebody fucked up. And most of us have been through that. And it's an absolute fucking nightmare.
All I know is all the food and bev people that I ever knew over the years, just, lots of just drugs and alcohol after hours. Like, I don't know, maybe that's how they cope with it or whatever, but
yeah, it is it is. It's absolutely how you cope with it. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that goes on.
Or, for a more wholesome version, the Bob's Burgers episode where the professional chefs kind of invite him into their circle, and he's this middle-aged dad, and he has to like stay up late trying to keep up with these chefs, and he wakes up hungover one day and there's like a corpse of a curry goat or something. I don't know.
Wow. I didn't see this one.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to kick off the bold prediction, since you seem to be itching with your A-Rod one, or what's the deal?
Well, I'm going to come out firing. Well, I don't want to do the A-Rod yet.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to come out. I'm really spicy this year. I'm going to let you know.
Okay.
Right from the beginning.
I love it. All right.
Right from the start, possibly the spiciest of all of my takes. One, Dakota Rain Prescott will not get his contract done. It will turn ugly, and by this time next year, Trey Lance will be the Cowboys starter.
Okay, so before I judge you on the scale, why don't you make the case as to why this is at least plausible?
Well, it's not got done yet, and the price keeps going up, and Dak's not in the sphere of Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. And unfortunately for him and the Cowboys, he thinks he is. And all indications are that he's going for that level of contract, and I don't think it's going to happen. Jerry Jones would be a fool for that to happen, and I think Jerry Jones is a lot of things, but I don't think he's a fool when it comes to business.
So as someone who has, I don't want to call myself a Lance defender, I'm a defender of the idea that you can't call Lance a bust, and we needed to see him get traded away from Shanny to really know what he has. So as someone who's been banging that drum, I don't know that it's so spicy to me, right? But probably like to the general public, the fantasy, universe writ large, I would say it's probably a Scotch bonnet, right? So
okay, all right, that's a four banger. Okay, right on.
That's like the low end of hot, right? So the reason I'm saying it's that is because a couple things. One, it's not like Carolina Reaper, because fucking Jerry Jones is erratic. We don't know what the heck he's gonna do, right? And
True.
Because they have what we think is perhaps a pretty good dual threat quarterback in house to take over for Dak, so they have the alternative. But the reason it's hot to begin with, well, at least one of the reasons that I wanted to ask you about, that contract is, from what I've seen, is pretty rock solid for 2024, that they kind of are stuck with it.
Oh,
So
they are.
and
Okay.
can't and the
Okay.
only way they're going to save a lot, or the only way they save any kind of money at all, is one of those like designated post June 1st trade things. So like, who's going to trade for it, right? That's the reason why I'm saying it's not so, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's one of the reasons why it's hot to begin with, is because I don't know that they can do it. The read that I've been getting is, well, now we have to wait to 2025 for Lance. So
Gotcha.
what would be your, like, is it just like, hey, teams do shit, they
Well,
restructure things, somebody will
yeah,
trade for Dak,
exactly.
some contender will
Right.
trade for Dak or something? Yeah.
Exactly. You can designate him and then, agree to the trade, and then it goes through June 1st. That's fine. That's plenty of time for Dak to get into a new offense and acclimate. The salary cap is a myth, that I say this. And actually, I got some confirmation on that the other day. By the way, I was listening to Chris Harris, and I'm gonna paraphrase, but it's a near quote that he has friends in NFL front offices, and they are laughing at the notion that you can't just kick the can down the road all the time. That eventually the bill will come due, and that you'll have a cap hell year. They laugh at that, and it will never be true, and it's never been true for the Eagles. So I believe that. It's a matter of whether the owner wants to actually spend the cash or not. It's the actual cash.
Yeah, the way that I've heard it told is maybe not quite as laughable as that, which is kind of interesting that he heard that. But it's more like the cap is a myth for like a player or two. You can always move something around to add that one or two more players, but like, then you're stuck. And then at some point you are paying the piper. But I don't know. I guess maybe not.
It's the only cap NFL teams truly have is what the owner wants them will give them to spend. And I've heard other people say this. I heard Greg Cosell say this. Actually, it's not this salary cap. Every year, every owner spends a cash limit, and that's what the GMs have to work with.
Yeah. So it says here that they could save almost 1.4 million if it's a post June 1st trade. That would be their out.
1.4 million. That's all
Yeah,
they save.
It's not a lot.
And they pay the rest.
And any other scenario, anything pre June 1st or a post June 1st release, it's actually negative savings. Like, they actually lose money. Yeah.
But I don't know that it's about saving money. It's like I said, if it turns ugly and he's not going to play for them, and they're not going to pay him, some ultra ridiculous contract, then, I mean, at this point, Jerry Jones can't just dare him if he's willing to, give up service time or whatever happens.
Yeah.
It might, like you said, it might take another year, but I really don't think that he's going to be their long-term quarterback.
I agree. With that, for sure. So would that make? So that's the whole thing. Like, is Lance, even at a bargain basement price, a buy, since the tax for holding him is for so long? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, theoretically, but I just don't think that the Lance owner is at this point not going to trade him to you for a third. So if you want to pay a second, you might get that. Oh, speaking of, Brian, can I just brag a little bit real quick?
Sure.
I sold Baker Mayfield for 2 seconds yesterday, which has made me feel really good.
Yeah.
I didn't even sell him. The offer just came to me. For a
there
24 and a 25 second. Do that all day. Like, he hasn't been worth that in a couple of years, probably.
You know how we joke that like the best job in the world is a backup quarterback for the NFL, right? Like the best fantasy job in the world is a starting quarterback with a pulse in a super flex league.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So we've seen animosity with a weird owner unfold right before us with the JT situation. And that's defying logic, and that could cause some contract ruckus if it becomes a pissing match. Like, and Jim Irsay really wants the contract to toll, and the year gets voided, and JT doesn't accrue just to prove a fucking point. Like, that could happen, right? So
Yeah.
So all that to say, drama between Dak and Jerry Jones unfolding in a way that creates the scenario that you're laying out here is not implausible. Not implausible.
Right.
Jerry Jones is weird. Although, you know what? He surprised me in not bringing Zeke and cutting Zeke and not bringing him back. That surprised me. There must have been people like stealing his phone from him every time he wanted to go text Zeke or something like that. But at least that's how I picture it. All right, so I'm gonna get this one out of the way. I have one for each position and then an extra one. I'm gonna get this one out of the way because this is my favorite one. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. So this is a parlay, actually. It involves having to hit on two players. And I added a second one because it's going to be fun. Two of these two players are going to be a top 15 wide receiver in total and or points per game in basic PPR scoring. Top 15 wide receivers. One is my friend Brandon Ayuk, who I hit on last year and is a flag plant. The other is a year two wide receiver with such a wide path to hit his ceiling outcomes that anybody who would say otherwise is a weirdo to me, and that's Christian Watson.
Old Gabe Claypool himself.
Right. I added that after listening to the Dynasty War Games episode, and you say that he has such a narrow path to hit his ceiling. So I was like, I have to.
As soon as he started, I knew what you're talking about.
So let me just tell you why it's plausible, and then, but perhaps
so both of them have to hit for this to
right. Yeah.
To hit. Right.
Right. So Ayuk, we've already seen him be very good in the post doghouse era of his career. And as I said last year, was a hit for me, wide receiver 17 total. I have him ranked at 16. And for him to finish top 15 would be above market from where he's ranked on all these sites and where he's being drafted in startups. Not that startups or dynasty rankings translate into what you'll think they'll do in 2023, right? So if he's ranked, say, wide receiver 22 in somebody's dynasty rankings, that doesn't mean the person thinks that they're going to be a top 22 wide receiver in 2023 because it's dynasty. But, just in general, that's why it's slightly bold, because it's above market, right? The reason why it's plausible is he's already, like I said, been very good post doghouse. I think he's a truer wide receiver than Debo. Debo is more of that, Swiss Army knife kind of, hybrid wide receiver and running back, which I think was better, A, for Jimmy Garoppolo, and B, before CMC got to town. Debo has been hurt by CMC since, as far as that goes, production since the arrival there of CMC. Purdy, as much as I do not like Purdy, he's a competent enough, distributor of the ball and runner of the Shanahan offense in a way that I think is going to help Ayuk more than it's going to help low A dot Debo. And Kittle, another mouth at the trough, is an aging, 30-year-old tight end who's largely last year dependent on spike week, unsustainable touchdown efficiency. And I believe when all four were healthy and on the field, Debo, CMC, Ayuk, and Kittle ranked fourth in target share, which I think is important. So that's why it's plausible for Ayuk. For Watson, the reason why it's a little spicy is because that's above market. I have him ranked 19th KTC 18th. Seems to be in the late teens and early 20s where on these sites that rank folks and where the ADP is. So it's above. So finishing the top 15 would be above those numbers, right? The reason why I think it's plausible is that, the reason why I'm sort of leaning into it is more and more I'm coming around to the idea that it's important to lean into upside and ceiling, because that's what wins championships, ceiling outcomes, and betting on talent, because everybody knows that volume is king in fantasy. So it's about finding the talent that will then command that volume. What some folks call upward pressure. There's upward pressure on the talent from the talent to create that volume, right? And so when it comes to his talent and his efficiency, I'm going to bombard you with some stuff because I know you love numbers, right? Hold on. Let me.
Oh, so are you looking for numbers
Yeah, I got
convince me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because then I'll give you the film side of it if you'd like.
TD adjusted yards per route run since 2007, right? Rookie year, right? Odell Beckham, top 5. Odell Beckham, A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, number 5, Christian Watson. He led all wide receivers in high-value targets, and among players with over 60 targets, he had an expected TD per opportunity, which would rank him top in I think the top 10, I think. Okay. He was top 3 in deep target rate at 31.3%. And also the percentage of his targets coming from inside the 10-yard line. So red zone usage, not just a, yak guy, at 10.4%. Right. So he was actually wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game from week 10 onward. I mean, basically, if you look at any metric of targets per route run, yards per route run, yards per target, he actually not only did well, but did well in such a sense that the only guy, basically every guy who hits those numbers goes on to have really good seasons, right? If you look at fantasy points per route run, he outperformed his per route opportunity more than Cooper Kupp. Watson was ranked 3rd among wide receivers in fantasy points per game while trailing, which if we think, the backers will be bad this year, that helps. Let's see. And also you say, okay, well, downgraded quarterback. Rodgers didn't have a good year last year. He was playing with a broken thumb for a lot of the year. And I would say there was weeks where he was mailing it in. And Rodgers ranked 18th of 33 qualifying quarterbacks in a catchable throw rate for 2022. Better than Marcus Mariota and Zach Wilson, but worse than Andy Dalton. So he's a freak after the catch, yak per reception, and also when you chart yak per reception with ADOT, which is, you want to be in the upper right quadrant of these charts. He's a monster in the upper right quadrant of these charts with guys like A.J. Brown and Jalen Waddle. Wide receivers that do what he did, even in a small sample size, even with not being a perfect route runner and not having the greatest hands ever, right? Hit consistently. And whether or not he pans out, I'm uncomfortable not betting on this archetype and this profile. This is the archetype and profile you bet on, especially as a year 2 wide receiver. By the way, most of those numbers are courtesy of Ryan Heath at Fantasy Points. Their data is awesome. And if you look at the air yard share, the receiving TD percentage that he had was actually high despite playing only a few games, right? And even if you say, unsustainable TD efficiency, that's the one knock on the numbers. Everything else, right? Even production that's independent of TDs, right? He's hitting all the marks you want to hit, right? Let me just bombard you a little bit more with some numbers.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, the problem is when you throw so much at me without letting me rebut, I'm only able to rebut maybe one or two of your 75 points.
You don't know. I'm not asking you to rebut. What the point of throwing a million numbers at you is saying
I don't want
that
you to.
is saying that it is simply not to this yards per route run or this. It's to say the amount of data that says he's a good bet is so unbelievably large that the only way you're betting against this is by creating bullshit in your head, like, oh, he can't run routes well enough. And it's just not true.
He only had 41 catches. Oh, he only had 600 yards. Oh, his performance, his actual point performance, which was only PPR wide receiver 41, was largely touchdown driven. When you're forgetting about the 2 rushing touchdowns that he had, which is not sustainable, right? You can't predict that he's going to have rushing touchdowns every year as a wide receiver, right? And especially when he only got 7 carries. All right. So, and one of them was a really long one. So, yes, I will absolutely give you that he made some amazing plays last year, and he has got a lot of ability, right? As an athlete, he tested through the roof, right? And he showed it on the field immediately. Not immediately, I'm sorry, because immediately he dropped a touchdown pass and Aaron Rodgers then wouldn't throw to him for 5 or 6 weeks. So then he got a chance to show it. However, like I said, he made a lot of big splash plays, right? That you can't assume are going to end in touchdowns. You can assume that his talent will allow him to continue to make plays like that, right? However, you're also not taking into consideration his surrounding cast last year, whereas you can't go into a year loving a guy saying he's the only guy, that's why he'll get volume. But if it ends up that he's the only guy, well, then he'll get volume, right? All they really had was Aaron Jones, Christian Watson. You can't tell me that. Who am I missing?
Well, arguably,
the rookie wide receiver.
Dubs, Lazard, Cobb, guys Rodgers
fell off at the end of the year. Alan Lazard is a wide receiver 4 or 5 on any other team in the NFL. If he even he would make the Eagles team. So Alan Lazard is only a thing because
this year he still has the Dubs, who we don't really love. A guy in Jaden Reed, who I love, but you say is a practice squad guy, like half jokingly. And then Luke Musgrave at tight end, who's a rookie tight end, who I like, but again, rookie. And if anything,
who's coming and taking the job and is going to command targets.
If anything, he's more certain to command a bigger target share than he was.
And now it's second year for Dubs. And he doesn't have the whole Aaron Rodgers hates me now that I dropped a couple passes thing. What I think is, number one, the competition for targets is going to be a lot more steep, right? Number two, the sustainability of the long plays ending in touchdowns it's just not sustainable. It probably will regress. It should regress. And number three, you're forgetting that there are other players that have done this and then not done shit afterwards, sure. Chase Claypool. My entire argument is not that Christian Watkins is a bum or he's unathletic. My argument is that he is absolutely capable of becoming an alpha, right? But the path to it is narrow because of the type of player that he is. He doesn't get open on short or intermediate routes, as well as other players, other archetypes in the league right now. He's more of a deep target type of player, which is a high variance type of player. So to sustain that type of archetype, like as an alpha, as a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 in fantasy, you have to be so elite at that you're a legend like Vincent Jackson.
His 8 out was 14, so it's not like it was like 1921. And there were a few really good plays where he got open short and then got a lot of yak after it. The point that I
And there
guess
were a couple of blown coverage plays in there as well that I
but
specifically remember.
yeah, but like I mean,
Long ones.
so I mean, everybody gets blown. Like I mean,
Not everybody.
basically what I'm saying is I don't necessarily I disagree that the path is narrow. I think the only way he doesn't take a leap year two and be somebody that we're really interested in having this time next year is if Jordan Love is just, hits like the 25th percentile outcome of his range of outcomes. That's the only way. Other than that, there's like no way Christian Watson, shouldn't say no way. Other than that, right? Like it's the good bet to make. And that's really all I'm ever saying with when I lean into ceiling and upside. You may be right. It may be that he turns out poorly. That doesn't mean that like the mountain of data saying that he's a good bet to make isn't there. Like here's the good bet to make and here's the bad bet to make. And that's the bet I'm going to make. I will bet on this all the time.
If that's only if you believe in that data, which is 14 games. So
of course I believe in it.
If this were baseball, that's 2 weeks.
Here we go again with the small sample size. Like, first of all, some of this is, it's the idea that he didn't play a full 17 games. I get that. But when you look at the way that everything plays out, especially, when he was healthy and a full-time player, he was still doing X, Y, and Z. Like, yes,
I just gave you two recent examples of players that have had seasons very similar and then busted. So I don't think that he's going to be a piece of shit. I think he's more of a 50 to 60 catch, 800 to 1,000 yards, and then touchdowns are variable for most players. Unless he becomes a true red zone, high point, my ball kind of guy, like, DeAndre or whatever.
But even with an 8 out of 14, which is sizable, it's not like way deep where you're worried he's just like a deep threat, but it's a good 8-dot. You usually don't get a lot of yak per reception with that much 8-dot because the 8-dot's, so long, there's less yak to get. And I told you, like, he's up there with Jaden Waddle and AJ Brown on yak per reception and 8-dot. Like, you don't like he's a monster.
A much lower volume. So because he broke a few big plays and some of them on busted coverage last year, it skews the numbers hugely in a small sample size. Especially in this situation, I think small sample size is blinding you.
So Watson wasn't
if you were to use a combination of analytics and film study on this player, I think you would be more towards the mean, which is probably around wide receiver 20, 25.
So I get that there are things around the edges and nuances from watching him on film, that say he's a little raw, he's a little boom bust, and he has some development to do. Of course, he's a rookie. This right, and this is a year 2 league. But like the thing is, you bet on rookies that put up these numbers to make a year 2 leap. He may not make it and he turns into Chase Claypool, but to say that it's a bad bet, I think is just.
I'm saying that his archetype. I'm saying his archetype rarely hits as a high-end wide receiver too.
Okay. So yards per route run rate was 2.26, right? That was the second best in the 2022 class behind Olave. Right. And among qualified rookie wideouts since 2011, it was the 7th highest. And the players around him on that list have gone on to have really productive careers. That's per JJ Zacharyson. His year 2 model has a score of 92.5 percentile for he does acknowledge that Greg Little and Chase Claypool are part of like this spectrum of outcomes, but so is DK Metcalf. Right. And we like DK Metcalf good enough.
That's the extreme. Yeah. That's the example that Memphis brought up the other night. First of all, DK Metcalf has 20 pounds of muscle and is one of the freakiest athletes in the NFL. Strength wise, muscle wise, Chase Claypool doesn't compare. Do you want me to? So we've gotten to the point where we're each making our own argument independently of each other and not responding to each other. So do you want me to?
No, I don't think I am. I'm saying.
Well, you're not responding to the archetype argument.
I am by saying this is the type of archetype you bet on.
Analytically,
you bet on
not
athletic freaks who put up these numbers going into year 2. Chase Claypool, by the way, was a good bet to make. He didn't pan out, but at the time, he was a good bet to make, and that's all I'm saying about Watson. You can't say that there's equal evidence that he's a bad bet to make, that he's a good bet to make. That's all I'm saying.
I can say that. I just did, and I gave it to you. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
How spicy is this? A parlay on Ayuk and Watson.
So Ayuk is not spicy. That's a pepperoncini. Pepperoncini. That's how you say that properly, people. The Chase Claypool one is spicy to me. I got to make it a tie. It's a Thai chili, which is at the top end of the 3-banger, right? So you're at the top end of hot, almost super hot with that one. Now, if you take the fact that they both hit and put them together,
parlay.
Yeah, it's a habanero. You know, it's a 4-star habanero.
Let's do it. I'll do it.
I mean, we just yelled at each other for 20 minutes, so it's got to be spicy.
Well, I knew it was going to be spicy for you, right? I knew it was going to be spicy for you.
Part of why I stopped the Watson argument is because I'm starting to get fatigued with it. I've made it too many times at this point, so I can only yell about it so much before I want to move on. Because I make my points and I'd stand by them, right? And nobody's.
I will admit, I have been up and down. Like, he's still been in that tier of like wide receiver 19 to 30 for me. It's just a matter of like he started like at the top, then he went to the middle, and now I got him back up at the top after looking into it more. I will say you've stood by what you said about Watson the whole time. So
right on.
What's your next bold prediction?
All right, let's just do the Aaron Rodgers one. So he's going to win the NFL MVP straight up, fire tour. He is going to shove it up. He is going to shove it up Brian Gutekunst's ass. Now that I have the weapons I want, he's going to make. And here's my second one. And you know what? Let's parlay it. He's going to make Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going to be the NFL MVP, and Garrett Wilson's going to be what's the other one? Offensive Player of the Year.
Player of the Year. Yeah.
They're both going to win those, and Garrett Wilson's also going to be the Dynasty MVP. Put it in the papers. It's done. So, I mean, I don't know how spicy that is. After the way I broke up with him and we were really on the outs, I mean, kind of smitten with him again. He got his beard shaved. He's got like short hair now. So, I don't know. Like I said, it feels like a clean start with it. Yeah, I just love it. I love the way he's into it, leading the offense. I mean, I kind of felt it anyway, and then watching Hard Knocks, and then watching Garrett Wilson on Hard Knocks. Oh my God, he's just seems like a very intelligent guy that really, really wants it. And he's so good. They're both so good together. This could be better than, Jordy Nelson or Devontae Adams. It really could be like the best pairing, like the best hookup that Aaron Rodgers ever had. I hope he stays there for 2 years at least.
My hatred for Aaron Rodgers, the person, is well known. And here's why it's. I think you made a good case for why it's plausible, because after all, bold predictions are bold predictions, but they're based on like if things broke one like really bad or really good for X player or whatever, this could happen. It's within the range of outcomes, right? It's not like you're saying Deion Jackson is going to be the NFL MVP, right? So I think the reason why it couldn't happen and therefore its level of spice is A-Rod plays slow, right? and they know that they have a 39-year-old quarterback with a not so great offensive line and really one and a half NFL wide receivers if you count Garrett Wilson and Lazard. Question marks at tight end. I think it's going to be a little more defense and running the ball than we've seen Rodgers teams before. And so I think, and that plus how slow he plays, I think puts a cap on the types of things one would do to get the MVP. Now, the reason why, though, that I still think it could happen is because, let's face it, like this is a media award, right? And the story of Aaron Rodgers returning to competence and glory on a new team and saying F you to the people are going to love that, right? So I think the bar for him making the MVP would be lower than some other players, right? Getting the votes, right? So I'm going to say the level of spice on that is
Hold on before you give me your judgment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One last argument for him, and that's yes, because you make a good argument that, play slow, good defense. However, he's going to do things to create statistics for himself because he's an asshole. He's done it in the past when he won the MVP. It's 1 yard touchdown passes when he could just hand it off, or quarterback sneaks at the age of 38 so that he gets the touchdown and nobody else does. Trust me, you're going to see a lot of 1 and 2 yard touchdown passes out of Aaron Rodgers this year because he's a fucking asshole.
Yeah, but I think that what adds the spice too is that you're also saying Garrett Wilson's going to be Offensive Player of the Year, which is a tough lift. Like when you look at the odds versus the field, right? Like there's so many other players that could plausibly win it. So
really tough.
I'm going to put this parlay chocolate habanero. We've got that at the top of the four peppers. 435,000 to 577,000 heat units. That is a chocolate habanero parlay.
That's hotter than a red Savine, Fatale. That sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Right on. All right, I like it.
Sounds like it would literally kill you.
That knocked out 2 of mine, by the way, but I still have 2 left.
Okay.
But you're up.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you. I had to do that one first to get it because I knew it was gonna take the longest. So I just wanted to get the Watson one out of the way. So
right on.
So now you get to
took a lot of the fight out of me too.
Do you want to? Well, we started early. We started at 5:30 today. Do you want a quarterback one? I have 2 running back ones, and I have a tight end one.
Let's do the tight end one. That sounds fun. I have a lot of quarterback stuff. So
okay, at least 3 rookies.